You have arrived at the place where your manly mentor is here to talk about the subject that you are obsessed with, because you are a young man who might notice some signs of receding hairline but aren't actually bald, and you need someone in your life to tell you to openly talk about hair loss and receding hairlines and that sort of thing, because this isn't something, it's not a cool thing to talk about in the real world. So here I am, here to help feed your obsession with hair loss. Let's talk about President Obama. Let's talk about this guy. So I was thinking about all of the presidents we've had in the United States. I can't think of a president who had shorter hair than President Obama. I mean, there were balding presidents, like Gerald Ford, but even then they had hair and they just kind of pushed it back through it. I mean, at least in recent decades, presidents aren't bald. President Obama obviously wasn't bald. You could barely call him a Norwood one. But noticeably, he kept his hair very short. So he looked like he didn't, you don't even think about his hair because it is so short. And of course, with him being of African descent, I'm not going to say he's the first black president. I do not believe that President Obama was the first black president. I believe he was the first biracial president. He had a father from Africa. If his father did a DNA test, his father would be largely African, mostly African. You can't say that about African American or black American people, because, and I have a whole other channel to talk about this, Family Friendly Daddy Blog. It mainly focuses on DNA test results. But most black Americans, when they take their DNA test, and I just talked to someone who's black and took their DNA test, and I said, let me guess, somewhere between 2/3 to 3/4 African. Not more than that, right? Now, yeah, I think it was like 70%. Yeah, that's what's typical in America. But if you're in Africa and you're a black African person in Africa from there, your DNA test is going to show you're much higher than a black American, because black Americans in their ethnic background also have typically European DNA. It's not necessarily that case if you're actually from Africa. President Obama's father was actually from Kenya. He was from Africa. And then President Obama's mother was from Kansas, and she was as white as you can get. So, at best, let's say that his father was 100% African. At best, Obama was 50% African background. So if we're looking at the racial background, he's the first biracial president. And that is interesting because when we're talking about U.S. presidents, we are talking about men who basically were mainly Anglo. I think that's interesting. We don't even have presidents of like, I would like mestizo, like Mexican American, where there's Native American DNA mixed in there. It's basically just, I mean, even the only president that wasn't Protestant was JFK. He was Catholic, but still he was very Irish American. So that's interesting. But yes, President Obama was the first biracial president. Now, for me, if I were president, I could also be considered biracial because of the Native American that I have from the Mexican side. I could be considered that. But most presidents couldn't say that. President Obama, first biracial president. But black president? No. Because then we're getting into the one-drop rule, which was a very racist concept, that if you had one drop of African DNA, you're automatically black. Well, if we're going to say you're black because you're half, because one parent was black, you could just as easily say he's the first white president, which is not true. And he's not the first white president. He's not the first black president. He's the first biracial first biracial president. But this video, see, that's the kind of stuff I talk about on my other channel, Family Friendly Daddy Blog, which I should basically just redo this video and do a different version for that. I probably will. But let's talk about his hair, because this channel is about hair loss. Note to self. That's how I should upload this one. So yes, he had very short hair as a president. The only president I know of that had so short of a haircut. If I'm wrong, let me know. But again, there were bald presidents and balding presidents, but they still had hair. And I will note that yes, most presidents have a good set of hair. Even George W. Bush, who was pushing 60 when he was elected, he was in his 50s, but his hairline was actually pretty similar to mine. Now, granted, I'm 38, and he was already about 20 years older when he became president, but his hairline was actually like this. It's just that he has wavy hair, so it downplayed that fact. Bill Clinton, Norwood 1. President Obama, Norwood 1. You look, now granted, George Bush Sr., he would have been more similar to me, if not a little bit closer to Norwood III. But either way, most men who get elected president have they're not considered balding. We'd have to go back to, like I said, Gerald Ford, who wasn't actually elected, was he, to become president? We've got Nixon, who was the reason, I think, the reason that Gerald Ford became president. But Nixon noticeably had the strip, the Norwood III strip. But mostly men who get elected president have the appearance of full head of hair. But we live in a fortunate time where one of the most attractive men, physically attractive men on the planet is Jason Statham, who, notice I didn't say The Rock, notice I didn't say Vin Diesel, but I said Jason Statham. I think he is probably a better example because Jason Statham's the guy who's about my size. He's 5'10", I'm 5'9". We're basically the same size. We're not large men, but he is noticeably balding, and he doesn't perfectly hide it by going, with a razor. He keeps the stubble and the beard. So, we're getting into a time now where it's never been a better time for a man to be bald or balding and be president, because that's the most masculine look. And I think we live in a time where we so openly celebrate the gender spectrum. You have an advantage if you're a straight man, in that you can embrace that and stand out more. So I think it's actually an advantage, and I've said it before, I think it's an advantage if you are young and balding. You're probably not watching my channel. You're probably watching Max Da Silva or Bald Cafe, men who actually did go bald young and made their channels about that. Whereas me, I think people are going to naturally gravitate toward watching channels where the host most resembles them as far as their hair loss journey. So most of you aren't actually balding, but I tell you, you're in a perfect situation if you're the guy who embraces anything that's masculine and says, yes, this is who I am. Have a hairstyle that doesn't hide the fact that you have a receding hairline. Grow a beard if you can. Be masculine. If you're a straight man, then be a straight man and embrace your testosterone. Embrace your male features. Jason Statham. It's almost like a new theme of my channel is Jason Statham. I think he's just like the perfect model of what a man should look like. As far as when I think of like the perfect man, I don't think of, oh, what about Brad Pitt? No. Hair is not part of this equation for being a perfectly good-looking, handsome man and having the character traits that people are attracted to. Jason Statham is the ideal man, is what I'm actually submitting to you. The more I talk about it, the more strongly I feel about it. So I say it's a matter of time before we end up with a U.S. president more along the lines of the Jason Statham situation for hair, who embraces it. I think we're ready for that. Are we ready for the first female president? Sure. But are we ready for the first openly bald president in recent decades? Now more than ever. Your comments belong right here.